Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive series. Today I'm going to explore the mighty total solar eclipse in the fiery and passionate Aries, which occurs at 19 degrees and 24. This is the third supermoon in succession, which is where the moon is that much closer to the Earth, so it has a very profound physical presence on us. But what's even more important is this is in an exact conjunction with Chiron, the so-called wounded healer, to the minute. This is so rare, it's incredible. And I think it does have a huge spiritual purpose for us at this time. Chiron, a comet discovered in the 70s, gives us a lot of information about where a person will shine and be a leader in this life. So the location in the natal horoscope, in terms of the sign and the house, but also critically the other planets near it, is really important. But it also tells us where that person probably doesn't feel heard or seen in a way which causes a lot of pain. So that's the wound that we may not necessarily be able to heal. But we need to remember, in terms of mythology, that Chiron was the trainer of the gods, sustained a blow, an arrow to the foot, some texts say to the chest, and it wouldn't heal. But Zeus created a constellation that Chiron could ascend to heal and find peace. Now, if you'd like to know more about Chiron, you can download a factoid by becoming a Patreon. Thank you so much for all my patrons, and also for the patrons that have more recently joined. There's been quite a few, and I haven't mentioned this for some while. Your support is really appreciated. So you can download that Chiron booklet through Patreon. And I'd just like to say, I've been writing daily written horoscopes for near to 30 years. You can get yours fired to your device each morning, totally free of charge, by clicking on the subscription button beneath this video. I write for one of Britain's most read newspapers and provide content for websites the world over. But also within this, I provide the dominating influence for each day. So I hope it gives a lot of perspective. Please feel free to take advantage of that. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. Please share any thoughts you have. If you're a returning visitor, I really appreciate all your likes, comments, shares, and subscriptions. If you're yet to subscribe, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you should get an alert from YouTube. So if you'd like to consider a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials. I don't alter these as they come in terms of the contact form, and I hope that that would give you a lot of insight into how people have found working with me. Now on the screen now, I'm showing exactly where this event occurs the world over. It is on the 8th, apart from Sydney, where it's on the 9th of April. I'm also going to share with you now the event chart based on Placidus. Now, I produced these charts on Greenwich and Universal Time, not because I'm based in Britain, but because of the primary meridian. And the incredibly fascinating thing about this chart is the ascendant is in Libra. And it's also conjunct the part of fortune, but critically the south node, which is very much to do with our habitual behaviour. Why is that so significant? Well, it's because eclipses work in polar pairs. And if you recall, on the 20th of April last year, we had the first solar eclipse in this series that goes between Aries, a fire sign, but also cardinal, so very much to do with leadership, and Libra, an air sign, also cardinal. Now, the Libra eclipse occurred, solar eclipse, on the 14th of October. So that's the polar pair. Remember, fire needs oxygen, the air, in order for the fire to really burn brightly. So the fact that this particular event creates the Sun, the Moon and Chiron, along with Mercury in its retrograde in Aries, all in the 7th house, which is very Libran, is really fascinating in itself. But moreover, we have the North Node and Venus, the ruler of the sign of Libra, also in Aries. Now, Venus in Aries is technically debilitated, but I really like Venus in Aries. Venus is about desire. In Aries, it has more get-go, more initiative to make things happen, so really exciting. But with Mercury in a retrograde on this event, I'd just like to say on the next solar eclipse coming, on the 2nd of October in Libra, Mercury's conjunct that, but it won't be retrograde. So there may be some things that we have an opportunity to rethink over the next 6 months in terms of the overall sphere of influence of this event. But the 7th house is about where we relate, it's about where we hear, it's about how we find points of cooperation and collaboration. So it's not an Aries energy at all, it's completely the counterpoint, because Aries is about the first sign of the zodiac. So it has a kind of naivety to it. It's the same as the first house in our natal chart. It's where we're going to head off out, experiment, find out who we are. But to do this, this does feature a series of experimentations. And we're listening to our gut instinct, very, very Aries. But here we're asked to find a balance. And Chiron, critically, in the first house and in the sign of Aries, is very much about our identity. So we're asked here to think about our identity, or as people say these days, our agency, but also stay open to collaboration, be attuned to listening, not necessarily want everything on our own terms, because we all know one of the things that's happened with communication in recent years is it's become as polarized as these eclipses. People have opinions, but not necessarily discussions. And the propagation of information is not based on fact, it's based on manipulation. That is an absolute fact. It's very hard to get information which is precise and meaningful, and obviously because of the power of the tech giants, that's had a difficult impact on journalism. There's less money in journalism, so there's less investigation, and that means that there's less truth being held to power. That's an absolute reality. So what this solar eclipse is saying is it's okay that we interact with each other. It's encouraging us to revisit who we think we are. Is there some growth? Can we work on that inner world with Chiron's help? But can we also stay available and in tune with others? So that's quite a balance to find. And of course, the sign of Libra, all about balance. It's all about equity, the ins and outs. So really and truly, the irony of this situation in terms of this event chart cannot really be underestimated. It's a big opportunity for us all. Because I think on one hand, we can spend a lot of time worrying about what people think about us, Libra, and we can also forget, because we're assailed by such an array of influences and stimulation, we can forget who we are. We can only be something if we're wearing a designer label. What about us being the label? We don't necessarily need to be attached to something in order to prosper. So I think that's really what this eclipse series is asking us to contemplate. Now on the screen now is the event chart based on the solar perspective, and that puts all those influences in house 1. And for sure, house 1 in terms of Chiron, very much about understanding our value in terms of our uniqueness and not being nervous about holding with that. Now in terms of house 2, Taurus, Chiron, very much about our self-worth, our values, our attitude to money. Now because Chiron can be where we're brilliant in terms of encouraging others, but we don't feel seen, in terms of Aries, that can be the person who's the life coach, the sports psychologist, the person who is the motivator. In terms of Taurus and House 2, this could be the person who advises on growing vegetables. Could be somebody who really is brilliant at giving thrifty tips, but doesn't feel really appreciated for it. House 3, the fantastic journalist, but doesn't feel their sister, their brother, or their neighbour is aware of the value of their message, so they feel a pain there. House 4, very, very powerful position for Chiron. This can often be linked to the loss of a parent very young through death, or an absent parent, or very difficult home conditions. But this person probably has a great appreciation of the value of home, might have a very lovely home, and may be very kind and caring to support others, but doesn't feel they get that back. House 5 can be the person who really has a great appetite and a great enthusiasm to encourage people around their talents, their flair, their skills, but doesn't have a child, really wants a child. It doesn't happen for them, or doesn't meet that person to have that truly romantic relationship, yet may have huge insights around that arena. 6th house could be the person who's the dietitian, the supermarket worker, the person who's a nurse. Their precision and understanding of details, absolutely great. People take them for granted. House 7, this is a person who could be a counsellor, maybe even someone around marriage counselling, or a person who can give their friends great tips on how to cultivate the right relationship or meet the right person, but they don't feel their partner pays enough attention to them. House 8 may be the person who has supreme insights into sex, into intimacy, into finance, but doesn't feel those areas fulfill their needs. House 9, or Sagittarius, the person, however successful they are in life, and they can be very successful, may always feel that academically they've never really been as valuable as they could be, that some kind of wound was put in there, that they weren't quite good enough to get that degree or diploma. House 10 may be a person who really is super successful, but never seems to get much praise or recognition from the father particularly, or perhaps runs a business which provides a lot of helpful services or leadership, but doesn't feel very respected. 11, the issue here could be a great friend, doesn't feel friends always tune into their needs as much as they could. Chiron in the 12th house, this is a really powerful position. These people are incredibly gifted at tuning into other people in a very psychological, spiritual and healing way, but may feel totally invisible about their own sensitivities, and it can cause a lot of pain. The other thing with Chiron in the 12th house, people can often feel that they're bullied and singled out for their vulnerability when they're younger, especially. So again, Chiron 12 or in Pisces. So that just gives you a flavour of how Chiron can work. But if you'd like to know more about Chiron, as I say, you can download the booklet by becoming a Patreon. So who will be impacted by this solar eclipse most of all? Because it's at 19 degrees 24, I think we can go 3 degrees either side. So 16 degrees up to about 22 degrees, all the cardinals. So that would be Aries itself in terms of a conjunction, a square with Cancer, opposition with Libra, and the square with Capricorn. But let's think about the elements here, because fire needs that air, so the opposition with Libra, that fusion could create something positive. Also, if we think about the air sign of Gemini, that's a sextile to this event. So again, the air of Gemini, if you've got degrees from 16 through to 21, 22 in Gemini of any planetary position, that can be revved up by this solar eclipse. But what about Virgo? And what about Scorpio? Well, they're both actually in a quincunx to this event. The earth of Virgo is not good for the fire. The water of Scorpio definitely not good for the fire. So it's not just about the angularity on the cardinal signs from 16 to 21 degrees. And the cardinal, again, is Aries itself, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn. I feel that Virgo in the quincunx of 150 degrees, Scorpio in 150 degrees, can also be challenged a little bit by this event. But in turn, if you're a Gemini, a Leo, possibly a Libra, most certainly a Sagittarius and an Aquarius, this can be a very, very uplifting possibility for you. So I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces and give you a flavour of what you can expect over the next 6 months. But if you would like to ascend above the following zodiac forecast, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data, of time, date and place, I can produce for you your life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far, but a much more intimate understanding of them and how you can work with these energies in a better way going forwards. In my special package of 30% off, you can also get your 12-month transits, the moving planets in the sky interacting with your natal chart. And it's 30% off. Please see the link below for more. If you've had your natal chart done and had a forecast done, have you ever checked out your draconic chart? It's very much to do with the nodal axis. The draconic chart moves the North Node to 0 degrees Aries in everyone's chart, and that means the positions between the planets, the relationships and the houses are all the same, but it can lead to the actual signs changing quite significantly, particularly if you've got the North Node, for example, in Libra. Again, please see the link below for more. So Aries, this event comes at the perfect time for you because although Mercury may be retracing its steps and could create some frustrations through to the 25th of April in its retrograde, it's also asking you to rethink in some ways, recalibrate and reset. Because Venus has moved into your sign, you've had the Sun's combination with the North Node for the first time in Aries since 2006, and this event as well all gives you a fabulous chance to come into the moment because the first house is the present. The challenge you've had is there's been such a lot of energy, and there still is in terms of your ruler Mars in your 12th house. Now when Mars moves into your sign on the 30th of April, that's really going to supercharge you even more. But we've got to think that your sign is still ruled by Mars, and even if Mercury does create a little bit of frustration, this is a fantastic opportunity to really dart forwards into some new starts, some new adventures and opportunities. But if you are still working your way through some old stuff, entirely possible with Saturn and Neptune, but critically Mars in the 12th house, which are all really quite challenging locations, especially for those 3 players, it may be a case that to take that giant step forwards, you still need to be watchful and inclusive of those more psychological endings, or the things that haven't quite worked, or the people you're letting go of, because the more you do, the more that frees up more space within your being for you to come into the present in such a dynamic way. So could be a huge opportunity for you, but I feel it will be once Mars moves into your sign on the 30th of April that you're going to gain more traction from this event. The Taurus, you have a supreme understanding of the benefits of continuity, stability, strong foundations. But in recent years, there's been so much excitement for you. Uranus came along around 6 years ago, about 5 months initially in 2018 and full-time since March 19, and really slowly but surely been provoking you to be more experimental, to try to find the most authentic version of yourself, to perhaps at times be a little bit more challenging to other people, and to upset the proverbial apple cart in a way that maybe in the past you wouldn't have embraced. And concurrent to that, the energies of Pluto in your 9th house giving you a lot of access to new information, new thinking, travel, expanding your horizons. But this event brings it all back to you, but in a more spiritual dimension, because the 12th house can be about healing. And if you remember when I was talking about Chiron and the 12th house, your ability to assist others over the next 6 months with their personal development journey can be astonishing. The problem is that your sensitivities can be so heightened, particularly with Mercury in a retrograde in the 12th house and Venus, your ruler, in the 12th house as well. If there are people who haven't quite seen it through in terms of their interest or supporting you, the fact that we do have that gathering of energy in your 11th house of the future and friendships and connections, you may feel bereft. And there may be an incredible sense, even of betrayal, if some people haven't quite given you the support and the loyalty that you feel that you deserve. So that can be very testing. But then it may not be anything that's happened particularly recently, that suddenly you become much more conscious that there is this stuff still washing around in the depths of your being that maybe you need to release, let go and rinse out of you. But that process probably requires you to have less physical contact with others, have more peace and tranquility over this next 6 months. And if you accept this process and go with it, it will be one of the most enriching and powerful things you ever do. If you resist it, it could see you feeling very slighted, deserted and disheartened. So Gemini, with your ruler Mercury in retrograde in the sign of Aries, that gives us a lot of information. It means the 11th house, Aries, for you is about your future. There could be some rethinking going on. But this collective also suggests you want to be connecting, something you have a great talent for, with people who inspire you in some ways. You have a reputation of being able to get on with absolutely everyone. You can pivot on a 6 months, be very skilled at that, and you have a real buzzy vibe. But what this event is asking you to do is to connect with people where it feels more enriching. The 11th house is about our higher purpose. And because there's a lot of energy in your 10th house of work and responsibilities or voluntary interests, or where you provide support to people who are younger in your family, potentially, there is going to be a link. I definitely think who, as much as what you know, can be critical over the next 6 months. So some shifts in direction, you may realign your purpose. Do you know when we get a real idea in our head that we want to go for, it's an ambition, and we get there, and sometimes when we get there, we realise that our relationship to that desire has changed because we're not the same person. That's the type of thing that I think you may experience over the next 6 months. So Cancer, you have a wonderful opportunity over the next 6 months to raise your profile, gain greater recognition, refocus your connection with the world at large. Now, everybody has different goals and ambitions. Yours don't have to be professional to do with work. If they are, maybe at the moment you feel that you're not quite being celebrated as much as you could. But stay tuned to where you may rethink, Mercury retrograde, your own sense of worth in terms of recognition. You know, or do you perhaps need to change out of something that isn't working for you? The collective in Pisces is suggesting that maybe some new approaches, some training, reskilling, so that you can use past experiences and knowledge in a fresh way could be all part of the process. But if you are someone who's a caregiver for someone who's younger, or you do something in your local community, that's just as valuable, and that's still about keeping your visibility high to gain greater recognition. So Leo, a great opportunity to change things up over the next 6 months, to take on a more adventurous approach. If you are someone who tends to be a little bit more adhered to the fixed nature of your sign, that once you get things going you can really be invested, but it's just taking that first step, Despite the fact that Mercury's going retrograde, that just means that some information or knowledge that can help guide you over the next half year may still be evolving. You might not have it all in your grasp at the moment. But if there is a sense that you need to gain some fresh knowledge in some way, don't think down your ability to do that, even if you've got a lot of demands on you in your personal situation. A little bit of a shuffle and a change and flexing can create the space to bring in new energy. And it's all about taking that step into a more confident and optimistic future. And that's what the ninth house is about. So really positive time for you. Virgo, this solar eclipse suggests that something is in the process of transforming, but perhaps it is something to do with healing, which the 8th house and Scorpio can be about. But maybe that healing needs to come from greater analysis, something you have a natural gift for, but more of the psychological domain. Then in the more practical sphere, is it a business, a more entrepreneurial opportunity that you're thinking about at the moment? Are you considering forging an alliance with someone else? With Saturn in your 7th house, it's all about setting clear guidelines, terms and references and boundaries, so you would both know what you'd be contributing and both getting from the situation. But you can use that pragmatic approach in any kind of relationship, to be honest. But some situations may be potentially in such a process of change that you're considering whether they should make way. And at the moment, with your ruler Mercury in retrograde in your 8th house, the best you can do really is turn up your collar on your detective's Mac and keep just looking at things in that very forensic way that you have a talent for, and just give yourself the space to consider and reflect and mull over exactly where this might still yet go. So Libra, I'm going to start off your situation by asking you a question. How valuable do you feel you'd be as someone else's partner? If you do have any doubts about that, Chiron aligning with the Sun and the Moon and Mercury in a retrograde suggests some more rethinking could be helpful and useful. Maybe discussing your situation with someone who could give you some different and fresh perspectives. But if you don't have any self-limiting thinking going on, the next 6 months could be really significant for all sorts of connections. It doesn't have to just be in a romantic or intimate context. It could be forging very positive alliances where there is a mutual gain on both sides. So that could be very exciting. You may also find yourself circling back and reconnecting to someone from your past in a way which could surprise you, or perhaps you're going to hear from someone. It may be linked to your work, and it's possible that something that you've proposed in the past or something that's been discussed, you didn't get the response you wanted, but something could start to move forwards. And that's the strange thing about Mercury retrogrades. They can solve as much as disrupt, but having Chiron in the mix means it's crucial that you feel that you're worthy of having that connection, but also make sure that you're not eroding in any way what is acceptable to you in terms of what the other person may offer. So in other words, stay firm. Even if you feel you deserve the relationship or you deserve that contract, stay firm on your value. Scorpio, the wounded healer, Chiron on the 6th house. The 6th house isn't about health as such. It's more about our approach to the smaller details of things and how that all builds up into a larger whole. So if we make various changes to our approach, exercise a bit more, reduce the salt or the refined sugar, eat more fructose and glucose, cut out some cakes and those sort of calorific goodies, all those things, if we make small adjustments, it's not saying we shouldn't have the odd treat, of course, those can all build up into something more significant. But also, are you being a little bit too self-critical around yourself at the moment? you can be very blunt when it comes to your observations on others, but are you actually being quite tough and scrutinizing your own approach, and almost like in a soccer terminology, the striker who's on a hot streak and has scored 20 goals in the season, but really is in a state of upset because he's missed the sitter in the last game. So make sure that you are keeping a perspective on the big picture. But the sixth house can be about those small details of changes, amendments, those marginal gains, but it also can be about your work. And if you're in a job where you don't feel particularly appreciated, either by colleagues or the management, but you feel that you've got something very valuable to offer, the next 6 months may be the time to look for another position where you can find an outlet for what can be your very dedicated and adhered approach. Sagittarius, the fifth house, can be about play, but of course Mercury in the retrograde here suggests that some dates or social interaction could get disrupted before the end of the third week of this month on the 25th, when Mercury goes direct. But Chiron in the fifth house is a bigger, much more existential question you could ask yourself. Are you bringing joy into your life? Are you manifesting your supreme talents to the maximum as you could? Only you can answer this question. I feel that Saturn and Neptune have been very testing for you in recent times, particularly Saturn, and may have chipped away at your confidence, particularly if you are wanting to have some fun, perhaps even some flirty fun. The fifth house can also be about children. If that's something you'd like to bring into your life, it's important that you keep your thinking positive. And the role of Saturn in the fourth house is really preparing the way that your emotional foundations can work with that more extrovert and Jupiterian energy of yours, which can be good fun, playful, hale and hearty. You know, you have such a positive vibe. When you're on form, you may not have felt on total great form. But there's still a lot to come from this particular influence with Chiron in the solar eclipse, because with the solar eclipse in Libra coming in October, you're going to be busy. Managing your time over the next year is going to see you very much in demand, I can assure you of that. So managing that time is going to be important, but also getting your mentality really clear that you're available for the right situations, because Saturn and Neptune have taught you when to say no. Capricorn, what Chiron may be asking you is, have you been available at an emotional level enough in past connections and relationships? You may find that a difficult question to ask yourself. Has there been a lack of nurture in your life? You know, were your parents a bit cool or detached or absent? Maybe you felt a bit fearful of opening up and showing vulnerabilities. It's better to show your industry and how capable you are and how you're a respected member of the community because of your successes and your proficiency. But maybe this eclipse is asking you to rethink, Mercury in the fourth house, how you approach all these things. Sometimes we do have to become a little bit more vulnerable in order to bring someone close in, because if we don't do that, the buffer is so strong that people just pick that up without even a conversation and just don't open up to us. So that's something to consider. The other part of this is, if there has been some challenges around family life, is there some potential for some kind of rapprochement? If you don't feel there is, that's fine, it's down to you. You could find yourself thinking about it. Or is all this energy going to work at a more physical level? Are you going to move, adapt or improve your accommodation over the next half year? Aquarius, this eclipse is really exciting for you because it's going to inject a lot more pace and excitement and verve and sparkle and vim and vigour into your activities over the next 6 months. In fact, over the next year, there's going to be so much interaction. There could be quite a lot of moving around, journeying, travelling, short journeys, longer journeys over the next year. But even if you don't do that, there could be a lot of thinking, a lot of learning of new skills or sharing talents you have. Your profile can really be lifted. But ironically, with Mercury in a retrograde, it might just not go forwards initially quite at the pace you might like. By the end of April, I think you will start to get some green lights. And those green lights can see things really rocket forwards at a tremendous pace of knots for you. If there has been challenges with siblings or neighbours you still live around, it's possible that you could find a way to get the dialogue going again. But the third house is quick. It's not necessarily about a deep conversation. It's about people framing their interaction in the right way that makes you potentially receptive to their overture. But equally, because you are an air sign, you can, and Mercury is also important to your sign. It's ascended in Aquarius and also governs your second decan. So, you know, you have got a Gemini side to your nature. I feel that this eclipse for you is better than it is for most of the other zodiac signs, to be honest. It is going to create an awful lot of excitement, but it may be a little bit difficult to sit still at times and get in sleep, get in exercise, and dealing with the nervous tension this could create at times is going to be key too. So Pisces, this event for you is very much about your self-worth. If you feel valuable, and you could feel valuable with absolutely no money behind you because you have a healthy respect for your values, for what you represent, and the things that are important to you, which may be quite intangible things. It could be, for example, growing vegetables. It could be home cooking. It could be an interest in natural medicine. All those things can be Piscean, but the second house can be about a connection to the earth and the natural scene. Then again, you could have a house paid for, glorious possessions, big car outside, and feel perfectly valuable with that. But the converse can also be true. You could have all of that and still not feel particularly worthy. So that's the clue for you. That's the key, your Chiron key over the next 6 months. And of course, with Mercury in a retrograde, maybe there are some things to rethink. But having Venus in your second house suggests that some money is going to be coming to you before the 29th of April. So that's really exciting, because there's nothing wrong with money. It's our relationship to it that's important, and how it can make us different to other people. If we have quite a lot, creates a separation. So for you, if your self-worth is intact, this can be a time when you can draw more goodness to you. If your self-worth is not so robust, work on that through this next 6 months. It's been a real pleasure sharing this very special event with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do check out my weekly horoscope videos and also my monthly horoscope videos, which I have been recording for a very long time. But for now, if you would kindly like, comment, share or subscribe, that would be great. All the best and goodbye.